Hello, everyone. How are you? This is a journey through photography. I am Marc Skinner. I'm here with my good friends, Kenneth Nelson and Greg Cleghorn. Or as Greg likes to say, this is Greg Cleghorn in the lower right-hand corner, when my friend Kenneth Nelson in the upper right-hand corner, or maybe it's reversed, and I'm Marc Skinner. Anyway, we are.
How come why am I never the first friend? Why am I always the second?
I announced. I announced you first. I announced you first the second time.
That's okay.
Anyway,
that's okay.
Anyway, this is a journey through photography. And if you guys have been following, you find that we speak about a variety of photographic topics every week or so. Sometimes we skip a week, but just keep watching, you'll see. This week we have a topic that's called From This to This, or From This to That. We haven't quite decided. It's most likely to be From This to This. And this is the original photograph. And that would be after the photograph has been altered for presentation. Basically, we talk a lot about retouching or not retouching. Artificial intelligence being used or not, or showing directly out of the camera, or you'll hear me say, oh, I just cropped it just a little bit. Well, exactly how much is that little bit? And so what I decided this week was I decided to challenge my friends to show one of their raw images, gasp, and simultaneously one of their finished images. And the first person, we drew straws, but since we can't see each other, we each claimed that we had the longest straw. So it's my topic this week, and I decided that that Greg is going to be the first one to speak today.
Actually, it was me.
There you go. Integrity. Apparently, Kenneth had the shorter straw. Okay, so Kenneth will be speaking first about this, and then going to that.
Okay, I'd be remiss in making the relationship to a rap song called "You Can Get With This" or "You Could Get With That." You can get with this. This is
That's
where
right.
it's
at.
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So I'm gonna start off by showing you, and I can't do it simultaneously. I wish you would have told us that sooner about simultaneously, but I can't.
Well, that was
right.
on. So I have to apologize because we did have some scheduling difficulties.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So, you can get with this, and this image is out of camera. I'd say it was there. This image was processed back in 2021, and in 2021, I didn't have the wherewithal within Lightroom or Photoshop to really do some really unique things to improve on my imagery, and so I was willing to accept this image as is. And and I was like, okay, and it just sat with me, right? And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to get out of it, because if I try to adjust the contrast or tonality, I'm not going to get what I wanted. And so last year, there was a great big update to Lightroom, and it basically included artificial intelligence and masking. And when I finally got acclimated to that portion of Lightroom, it exploded the possibilities. And so today, this image I would no longer accept, but this image is the one I would accept.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Wow.
And what I'm getting at is that when I finally understood the techniques I needed to improve the equivalent of burning and dodging in a traditional darkroom, and being able to actually transfer that understanding to Lightroom, then I said, okay, every image that I processed up to now has to be re-looked at again with the different set of eyes. So again, this is before, and I was in no way considering that my main subject was too dark,
Wow.
or I was willing to accept that my main subject was too dark. Right? Because if I were to bring the whole thing down or add an S curve or a reverse F curve, it would have fell through. I even tried it, so I didn't.
Now,
And
when you say S curve, you mean like in the histogram?
in a histogram, yeah, or
Okay.
in a curve, and it just didn't work. And so this is what I had to accept. And I was like, okay, because, and again, it also had to just do with the fact that I just didn't think I could do it. And
Explain
then
what an S curve is, or a histogram, one or the other. Did you already? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, they'll. Google S curve on Lightroom. You'll get a lot of responses on Google.
Okay.
And so when I was able to then mask off my subject and realize and take that opportunity to do that, and it just completely obliterated my previous way of thinking in terms of my image. And now the images sing better. And I'll just give you another example. This, right? And I think this is, again, I probably output this first image back in 2021, late 2021, and 2022. And I looked at this and I was like, okay, I was able to now look at my images with a different set of eyes and say, what is happening here, and what is the main point of this image, and how could I make those improve, and then made the masking, and then came up with this after. All right. So that's before.
I didn't expect that. That I didn't expect. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Why? That's before. And that is after.
Wow.
Okay. You can get with this.
Or you can get with.
Or you can get with this.
That.
All right. And the one thing you have to do, right, realize is that if you're out there listening, please understand that if you're photographing a person and the person's face is darker than the background, you might want to reconsider how to make that person's face lighter than the background, or at least equivalent to it. And of course, there's other things you have to accept as well, but those are the things.
So, too.
Right? If you look at this, the background is brighter than the foreground. Therefore, your eyes are going to go to the back and not really look at the face. The reason why you're looking at the dogs is because the dogs are white and they're closest to the camera. But once you take that and make the adjustments, then it becomes a different story, and you're actually able to see expressions.
I'm with you up until you say you look at the dogs. I mean, the dogs, you're absolutely right. But I think that the red flags in the upper left-hand corner of this image, I find immensely distracting. I think everything really.
Gosh.
But I think the saturation on those, if that part would tune down a little, I think it'd be good. The same as the fire call box, so it sort of blends more into the background.
Okay. No,
otherwise, I think it's a great image. It's well composed. I think everyone's expression is so genuine. It's really nice. But otherwise, that, and I don't know, the guy on the left, I'm not crazy about, but that's okay. The guy with the shopping bag.
Right. It's okay. But again, we're talking about we're in this particular instance, we're talking about the comparative difference between this and this.
And that.
And so that's really what I'm getting at. Right. And of course, as we all know, that everyone's going to have their opinions about what imagery, what attracts them, what detracts them from an image. So, that's just typical crit. So it's no skin off my back, really. So don't worry.
No, it's not me to insult. I'm just saying that the red, from my sensibilities, drawn to it. That's it. That's all.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Exactly.
Okay. Right. I got an input.
I think you need an antacid there.
I saw the red flag.
Antacid.
But I mean, if you look at the image, it's, oh my God, what's the name of that photographer? Oh, geez. It's a famous image with a woman's boots, a Great Dane's legs, and a Chihuahua.
Elliot, you're right.
The early Irwin, yeah. Incredible image. When I saw the Danes, I immediately thought of that image, and then the way you captured this was even more fun, and because you get the expressions on these people's faces, it's just pure joy, and it's like all around the dog.
Yes.
The dogs aren't even
Yes.
aware of the adulation.
Yeah.
But I saw the red, and it didn't bother me as much as I saw that you repeated it. The red in the flag, and then the dogs have a red part of their collar, and then there's a woman on the right side has a red bag. So the red kind of fit in there for me, because that's what I saw. It didn't bother me as an element, because one, I mean, look at that. It's almost like perfectly positioned from the red flags to brings me to the red sash on the dog's muzzle, and then the red bag on the lower right. So, but in between that, I mean, look at all the faces. It's like every single one is having this, joy moment,
Yeah.
joygasm,
Yeah, I agree.
And if I was gonna crop anything, I would have just cropped in so that it was all about the faces, and cropped a little from the top, because the guy with the dogs isn't amused. He probably gets that all day long. But just those faces in sheer bliss.
So you mean like an
Stunning.
expand format? You would have done an expand format, so just the faces, not so much the dogs.
No, I mean, I think the image is fine the way it is. I mean, if we were going to nitpick on cropping, the red flags don't distract me at all. I think the red, I mean, does the red on the dog's muzzle distract you too?
No, they're not quite as cadmium. Those are closer to crimson, like
did
Small
you use a Pratt color? Oh, it's not a red, it's cadmium. I'm sorry.
No, actually, believe it or not, that was a CUNY tag color. But
okay. Yeah, okay. Anyway, nice shot, Ken.
Thank you.
You've come up with a.
The first one, I think the saturation and the edit was just a smidgen high. That was it.
I love the way you popped the shadows when you brought the faces out. I mean, that's the first thing that people, besides red flags, people lock into faces. We're hardwired for that since kids.
Yes.
And they're all having, a shared moment, which is man, it's another photographer that did that shot at the beach at Coney Island, and it looked like, as far as the eye could see, everybody was waving to the camera. Thousands of people, with their stizzle. Image capture like that, I just gotta throw up the props. That's a very, very cool image, Ken.
Yeah, right.
And the way you did the Lightroom experience that you described it's key. It totally transformed that image.
Yeah.
And the first one, the woman, it reinforced for me everybody was having a shared experience, be getting wet or hiding from the wetness, but you could see she was in another place, in the same weather, but in another completely different place, because you could see her facial expression. Whatever she was going through was hers.
Well, it looked like she was on a mission to get wherever she was traveling.
Oh, yeah, but it wasn't just your typical New York face to me. It seemed like something was going on. She was having some kind of a, process going on. I don't know what she was going through, because that's all speculation. But it was definitely, very nicely done, and I really enjoyed the before and after. So go ahead.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, what the main thing I was getting at was that, I was willing to accept the first image on both of them until I got acclimated to my abilities to transform those images in Lightroom, and transform what I understood and worked on in terms of the actual regular darkroom, and really took on the knowledge and transferred into Lightroom. And of course, I could have done it in Photoshop, but I've always was sort of like never really dealt with Photoshop. But since Lightroom is integrated with my library, you seamlessly go from one to the other. You go from importing the file to actually working on the image at the same time. And you don't have to come out of the program to go into another one. You just stay there and you continue to work on it. And that's the key feature, right? And so therefore
Oh, I
it was
see.
seamless from beginning to end. From
Yeah.
importing the image to outputting the image, it's in one app.
In one app, in one program. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. I didn't think of it that way. I'm usually a two windows, programs running side by side. Thank God for Macs. But yeah, I could see that. That's kind of cool. Very cool, actually.
That's all for me, guys.
I
Well
concur.
done, Mr. Nelson.
All right. So, Greg, how do we go from this to that?
And how do we go? How do we go from this to that?
Or from
Yeah.
this to this?
From
Yeah,
this, from
you didn't tell me
from,
which one was the this and this.
the first. Well, we'll put them up, and well, no, never mind. It was actually I was playing with exposures, and there was a moment when they were having a moment between the subjects and my this and that, or before
Okay,
and
well,
after.
I'm gonna give you this one
Go
because
ahead,
I
go
think
ahead.
this is the.
I was kind of goofing around with your title. I said kind of before and after because there was kind of a theatrical moment there.
Okay.
They were kind of they were enjoying the moment, enjoying each other and enjoying the moment. They had kind of a sequence of them, leaning back, getting a little silly. But I was so focused on them that I wasn't really paying attention to the whole composition and the lighting, etc., because I was enjoying them enjoying each other. So when I was looking at it, I felt kind of a little voyeuristic, like I was like kind of intruding on their time together. And I tried to make it into more of a packaged image, so when folks would be more, because it wasn't so intimate that it was what would you call that? Like an iconic moment, like a kiss at sunset, something like that, or a postcardy kind of a thing. But those kind of stick with people more, and they weren't the couple wasn't really doing anything that I felt I captured in them enjoying the moment, so that other folks may not be able to visually enjoy it on their own, if that makes any sense. So the embrace was nice, but I wasn't really getting their expressions. I almost wish I had a drone to fly around the other side and catch their expressions, but then the whole image would have been different. So I did the before and after, and kind of just waited for them to both look away, add the silhouette, and get a little more color in the sky, and it just changed the mood. It changed the way the image spoke to me. The amusement park lenses that let you look in the distance, was kind of more prominent, or more of a compositional element that popped a little bit better. But like you said, this wasn't any retouching, repainting. This was just adjusting the curves, adjusting the highlights, bringing the highlights down and the shadows up a little, and basically kind of exposing more for the sky than the foreground. And that's kind of my before and after. I mean, some folks might like the earlier image, but this one kind of, for me, it speaks to more of a visual visual essay than this one does. I mean, they all have their languages. I don't mind I don't mind this image and the, oh, did I do it again? Doggone it. I don't mind the high key. You know, it still says sunset at the beach. You know, and it's still about their embrace. But this one, for me, is more of a complete image, and by that I mean they create a specific shape. The binoculars, the quarter binoculars, creates its own shape. The water has its own color and tonality. Every element has its own language, verse.
Okay, I get you. I mean, it does seem like a slightly different image.
In what way?
Well, as you said, it has a little bit more detail, but I think the first image where you can actually see some of the man's face, I think that's a little bit, in my taste, that's a little better because it really is about the couple overlooking a balcony. Like without the binoculars, the vending binoculars, the vended binoculars, I wouldn't be able to tell it's a tourist spot. So that tells me, you know, I don't know where that is, but I do know they're either facing west or east. You know, it doesn't matter, but you know, I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't really matter in terms.
You say it doesn't. Oh, okay.
It doesn't matter in terms of my understanding of the photograph. It's obviously a couple. Obviously, there's some place where it's a little cool because we tend to think of places like that with the warmth, with the sunset and the warmth as being warm. Mm-hmm. So it's a cooler place. It's a definitely a tourist attraction somewhere, and they are a couple that, for all intents and purposes, appear to be very much in love. You know, and you can see at least one face, or at least enough of one person's face to, you know, get a sense that they are people, and it's enough. It's not. It doesn't have to be. If you had to compare the two. Now you get to the second photo. I'm not as crazy about this one because I don't think anything really stands out to me other than there's just sort of a silhouette that they form. But even in terms of the niftiness of that silhouette, I think the person with the looks like baby carriage maybe, or putting something in a garbage receptacle in the lower left is a little distracting to me, as is the person who's down on the lower level overlooking. If neither of them were there, I'd be okay, you know, but I find in this case, I find myself more interested in the binoculars, the relationship between the binoculars and the sky.
Did we lose you, Greg?
Oh, there he is.
Hey, Greg.
I missed a little bit of that, but
no, I said in this particular case, I feel more interested in the sky, the binoculars, as it relates to the sky, not so much the images of the people in this particular image.
Okay. I mean, I just like, as far as that goes, I mean, yes, the sky is more developed, but I mean, still, there's for me, I'm getting like the triangle between the pay-per-view glasses, the sky, I mean, the sun, the people, and the people down below. So my eye is kind of doing this triangular thing, and I'm enjoying that, and you know, enjoying each element of the image, you know.
Yeah.
But I understand. Oh, I gotta stop doing that.
Yeah, I have a preference for this particular one over the other one, and my reason being is that this particular one, the first one, is all about the sky and the water, really not about the people in the foreground. So therefore, I can't plant myself in the photograph. I can't put myself there. I'm more interested in the sunset. Okay.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. Really, the opposite for me. The other one, the opposite.
Right. And
the face.
The juxtaposition of the binoculars is kind of weird. So that makes me more disinterested in this image than if it were not in the photograph. Where
The,
you
the
then,
binoculars.
where,
Okay,
yeah,
right.
yeah, where you then include it in the photograph, then it becomes a playoff between the two eyes there and the two people standing there. The two
Hmm.
eyes of the binoculars versus that. And just the stance itself, it gives me something to bounce back and forth with. You've
Okay.
also changed the exposure because you modified it. So therefore, it's not as occluded. It has more depth. And then you've included the foreground, which plants me in the photograph. I'm now
Okay.
standing behind these two people, and I'm actually
Hmm.
looking down behind them. So it's not about me looking at the photograph. It's about me being in the photograph and looking at the
Ah,
sunset behind them.
interesting.
No, I would say the other one shows me that we're seeing a couple. Granted, I agree with you about the contrast and the tonalities. Tonalities are certainly better in this one than the other one. But I would beg to differ that there are a lot of things that compete for my attention, and it's great if you want to sort of look around the photograph. But I think if
Why
they're
wouldn't you?
next to one another, I think it stands well on its own. But I think if I had to choose between the two, I would take even the partial face photograph of a couple with the couple, where I feel like I'm sort of peeking in on their intimacy, right? Getting a glimpse as to how much in love they really are, because the way she's sort of leaning away from him,
Away.
it's almost as if that she's sort of hanging on to him, and that you know it's she's hanging on to him for support rather than hanging on to him uh, just
For
as a
love.
for me. This seems more like love. This seems like a much more loving image. It's just the two of them. There are no other individuals, so you get a sense of just the couple that is in the photo rather than the four individuals being in the photo. But yes, I'll grant you that the contrast could be increased certainly in the jackets and the knapsacks, and the you could get a little more detail in the water. But I'm okay with the water being delineated by just a few strokes of the pen. Seeing the waves. I get it.
Okay, and I'll say one more thing that distracts me from the image. It's the horizon line is off.
Yeah.
That
Uh-huh.
distracts me.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and that's why to me this looks like an unfinished photograph, where this one with the horizon line little looks more finished, looks more
Yes.
polished.
Hmm.
Yeah. It looks like you had more intention. I agree.
Yeah, I was not looking at the whole picture with with the other image. That's interesting. This is the first time that I've heard that I actually heard you guys for some reason. It was very, very um different.
Okay, good.
Thank you
Oh,
guys. I
hopefully
appreciate
it was
that.
helpful. I don't know the difference.
Well, I don't completely understand the lighting or the lighter image speaking the way it spoke to you, but hearing how it spoke to you helped me see something that my visual sensibility is not sold on. Does that make any sense? Um, but
I
hearing you say it made it seem legit, which was kind of cool. The half expression for me, I like I said, before and after, the whole theater of it wasn't all there for me, and I couldn't quite get them doing something towards each other to finish the scene. Does that make any sense? So him, just one person looking away, didn't say enough for me to say, okay, this is the final image. But hearing the way you guys experience the image helped me see it differently, which I appreciate. So, all right, cool.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I take the reason, partial reason why again is because I take a different take on it than Mark does because we've had different experiences.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's big, and the way you guys experience things is different, and that's what makes, makes art or visual arts photography interesting, which is very cool.
Okay. So ready
All right,
for?
bring us home, Mark. Bring us home.
All right, here we go. So this particular image is one that was made about a month or so ago, and I can't see it.
All I see is a black line.
I see a
Okay,
black
sorry.
line.
Give
That's
me
all right.
a sec.
And I've
The
titled it
Guggenheim.
"Nice Hat." Right now, the reason why I've titled it "Nice Hat" is because I was standing on the corner opposite the Guggenheim Museum on Fifth Avenue, and I was photographing the fact that the Mr. Softy ice cream truck hat, right, the ice cream on the
Spiral hat, yeah.
spiral hat, is very much like the Guggenheim. Now, I'm sure I'm not the person who thought of this. I'm sure the person who drives the truck has seen the relationship between the two and probably thought it was cute themselves. But at the same time, while I was photographing this, these two women crossed the street from the farther side toward me, and they looked at me, and then they looked at the ice cream truck. Yes, and then so they were interacting with me, and I was interacting with them and the truck, and so basically this is a photograph where it isn't really. It's interesting because what I'm getting out of this photograph is a reaction to my being in that space with a camera pointed in their direction, and they're walked right into my field of view. Now, when I photographed this, this was one of maybe 2 or 3 frames that I did. And out of the 2 or 3 frames, I thought this was the best. But because I, quite honestly, wasn't really expecting them and was still just sort of setting up my photograph of the ice cream truck in the Guggenheim, I wasn't really ready. So when I got the image home, I put it into image editing program, and I realized, well, I will always talk about I cut a little bit here and I cut a little bit there and I increased this and I did all these little things that I say are very much like a darkroom. And so I said, let me compare these two for everyone so they can see exactly what I'm talking about when I say I only do the types of things you would see in a darkroom. Now, you guys have each mentioned the idea of sort of dodging. You didn't use the word dodging. You used masking to bring up levels. But basically, I dodged a little bit the ice cream up the street and the pedestrians, and I burned in a little bit the Guggenheim to just sort of make that little closer match to the ice cream truck. The ice cream that's on the ice cream truck and the 2 hats that the ladies have. So nice hat, and there's 4 hats. I did crop on the left because I didn't think that person on the left or that building added to the image. I cropped a little bit on the right because, quite honestly, if you know the Guggenheim Museum, you don't necessarily need to have that additional information on the right. And so that's really it. Beautiful rendering of the sky, but it was unnecessary. It didn't necessarily add to the image. And in my instance, once you say nice hat, that particular building is so iconic. The idea that you need to show it in its entirety for people to know where it is, not necessarily. If it's only about
New York there.
Hmm?
If you're in New York there.
Right, I'm a New Yorker. Some people might wonder, well, where is that? But it's a very popular building. It's been around for at least 60 years, so maybe 70 or 80. It's very, it's iconic. It's sort of like, well, you see a picture of the Empire State Building, where is that? You know what I mean? It's one of those sorts of things. It's somewhere in New York.
The Guggenheim isn't as iconic as the Empire State Building now.
It might be one of the most iconic museums in the world. Maybe the Louvre and the Met might be on par with that in terms of the exterior being iconic. In any event, that's really it. So I lightened up the foreground, darkened the background, cropped on the top, the left, and the right, and that was my image. That was really it. So I went from this on the left to that on the right side.
I am shocked. This is one of the most complex images I've ever seen from you, Mr. Skinner. I wish you'd shoot more like it, but that's just me.
I can be complicated. I can. No, but I mean, I'm presuming you're saying that that's a good thing when you say complex.
Yeah, you've got foreground, middle ground, background, an iconic location. You know, even the lines in the street mimic the other lines happening in the image, and it's well done. You know, there's a black and white thing. If you flip this over to black and white, it would pop it even more. But I I wish there was more like this from you, because I think it's in you, but you just I don't know. It's a nice shot, very cool shot. Not just a nice shot. It's a very wall worthy shot, I'd say, and it's very unusual for me because I'm so used to your studio stuff, and your street stuff isn't nearly as complex as this one. This one is really nice. I wouldn't mind owning a 8x10, 1114 maybe in black and white. Just you know.
No,
My birthday's coming up.
Black and white. I mean, the cream color between the two hats that are on the people, and the cream color of the ice cream cone, and the cream color resulted from slightly burning in the. I think
this is all about black and white. That's a stark white building on right in front of an asphalt street. It's black and white. But anyway, go ahead.
I will say this: when I photograph with this particular camera, I do set the viewfinder and the screen for black and white, and I do to view in black and white because with this particular camera, I do a lot more street work. So,
my input on this would be, actually, there are two things. One, I just forgot what I wanted to talk about. The other one is the when you photograph on the street, no matter how much you want to control what you want to control, you actually have minimal control because, and then you not only have minimal control about what happens in front of you on the street, but you also have minimal control about what happens when people react to you in reaction to you being on the street. So the serendipitous nature within the photograph is the key, right?
Yes.
Without the serendipity, it would be a different photograph. And therefore, serendipity is a major part of this.
And it's a major part of street photography. Being able to capture it is what makes, your work, kids, so interesting. I mean, if Marc could shoot more like this on a regular basis, wow. But that's just
I have been. So there you go.
Well, let me further this by saying the serendipity is not only because the two people were walking across the street, but as Marc said, the two people were reacting to him. Therefore, they did what they did in reaction to him.
Right.
Therefore,
and then, go ahead.
Right. Therefore, if he weren't there, they would not, assumably, we don't know for sure, would not have had the same reaction, or would not have done the same thing.
Cool.
But
black and white clothing, black and white hats. The Mr. Softy machine right in front of the Guggenheim. I don't know if that's a normal, regular thing in New York, but just the layers of repetition is just.
Oh yeah, it is. But again, it's serendipity.
Right.
It's not predestined.
And he was there with the camera, and he captured it.
Right. That's kind of
even if it was an accident, he wasn't really expecting that.
I think a subject-rich environment is pretty much the key to street photography, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
in New York,
you go to different places to find subject-rich environments, and Fifth Avenue in various parts are subject-rich environments because everyone walking there. I mean, that entire stretch, probably from the top of the park on 110th Street, all the way down to maybe 23rd Street, even, or even further south.
What are you saying? Harlem is no visual interest to you?
what I'm saying is that it's a subject-rich environment because everyone there understands that they could be photographed. You know,
come on.
yeah, maybe that is
And
the
people in Harlem don't think that.
well, that might be the collective magazine. But what I'm saying is,
Mark,
if you're
you were so far ahead, but you just blew that.
no. If you're walking along Fifth Avenue, doesn't Joel Meyerowitz photograph on Fifth Avenue quite a bit?
You're not Joel Meyerowitz.
Yeah, but you're now trying to make a relationship between Joel Meyerowitz and these two people walking across the street.
No, what I'm trying to say is that as a photographer, we find that a lot of photographers currently walk around through Midtown. And I'm a little further up in this case, in the Museum Mile. But the idea,
and you live in Brooklyn. You could find similar shots in Brooklyn if you looked hard enough.
I could, but I would not find this particular iconic museum. I would have the Brooklyn Museum, and that would the Brooklyn Children's Museum. The Muse Museum doesn't exist anymore, so I'm kind of limited. The Coney Island Museum, maybe a few others, but that's really about it.
This is the first shot I've seen of you shooting anything New York iconic. Anything.
Well, he did the American. He did the TWA thing. So
15 low.
The TWA airport thing. So the TWA hotel. So
I don't. That didn't scream New York. He's saying
TWA doesn't scream New York.
What do you got? The TWA airport? That was the point. But
I mean, it's not as iconic as the Guggenheim. I mean, it was, but people nowadays wouldn't recognize the TWA, the old TWA. It was a work of art for sure.
Right, but you're kind of admitting my point in that Fifth Avenue has a currency to it. And I'm not talking about financial, a currency to it.
Oh, I know the meaning. I know double meanings of words, Mark. Oh my God.
Okay, but what I'm saying is there's a currency to it that it has had certainly for the last maybe century.
And that Harlem is just plain broke. Ain't no currency.
And if anyone's walking on Fifth Avenue, they understand that, particularly now with cell phones, that there are and security cameras that they could and probably will be photographed. And at that point, and if they don't recognize it, they're not concerned with it unless it comes to their attention that they're being photographed in an adverse way. I mean, I think this is a delightful photograph, but my point is that I went to a subject-rich environment. I was setting up to take a photograph of what was there that I knew was there. And as Ken mentioned, serendipitously, a couple with hats that remind us of both the building and an icon on a truck. That's just very fortuitous.
Wait. So you were going to take the picture because of the ice cream truck in front of the Guggenheim, or you were going for the Guggenheim?
I stopped to take the photograph because I felt that there's the ice cream truck, there's as you mentioned, the repetition of the stripes of the street, as well as the Guggenheim itself. And I knew that if I stood there on Fifth Avenue, like so many other photographers, that at some point, someone of interest would pass in front of me.
So you were waiting for something to happen?
About 5 or 10 minutes, yeah. But I really didn't expect someone as quickly as that they got there before I'd finished setting up. I'd taken a few photographs of the building and the ice cream truck, and I said, well, let me see if anyone, holy mackerel, there are two people who were wearing hats that looked just like the ice cream. And they saw me, they looked and looked directly behind them. And you can tell that they understood, that they were both wearing these cream colored hats. And on Fifth Avenue, that they knew they were wearing those hats on Fifth Avenue, and subsequently, if I'm photographing them, you kind of look, and then it probably dawned on them that as they turned around and saw the gentleman with the hat, that oh my goodness, our hats have similar shape to the
Did you speak to them?
No.
Or you're speculating that that's what they thought you thought, or they?
Well,
I don't know.
That's a
stretch.
well, I wouldn't say it's a stretch. It's one of those things where you look and say, if you see someone look at you, then they look behind them based on where the camera is pointed, and then they laugh when they are looking at the truck. You can kind of get that there's something they say that something they understand about me photographing them and the truck, or maybe them and the museum. There's some connection because they looked at them, they looked at me, then they looked at the truck as they were crossing, and they laughed, and they kept going.
Okay.
So
Did
I mean,
you engage them?
I understand a certain amount of human reaction.
Did you talk to them?
I did not talk to them.
Okay. I'm gonna just put in my 2 cents here and just say that I think they understood that you were photographing something and they were not the subject of your photograph, and therefore they were looking back to see what was the subject of your photograph, and then turned around and kept going.
Right, and
Whether now the subject of your photograph, I don't think they understood was the truck. I think subject of your photograph they understood to be someone walking behind them.
well, I think you have a good point, but I think as you can see from the original, they saw that the camera was pointed toward them, toward the truck, and simultaneously. Now they may have thought not necessarily that their hat was the part of looked like the hat of the truck, but I could tell they looked behind, as you speculate that something's behind them,
Right.
and that they weren't necessarily the subject of my photograph initially. And so, as you mentioned, they serendipitously walked in front of my field of view, and I took the photograph, a couple of photographs, and they looked at me, they looked behind them, and there was a little bit of a chuckle. So maybe they thought the hats matched the museum, or maybe the hats match that, or maybe it's just some crazy guy taking a picture of a truck. I mean, the point is they found humor in my being there and turning out. At least that's what it looked like. Now they may see this and say, nope, that wasn't what we were thinking at all. But from the reaction that I observed, that's what it is. But the point is, my point is, it doesn't matter. The point
It
is,
does.
as
What do you mean
you
it
guys
doesn't
always
matter?
tell me, what's in the photograph is what matters most, right? And so we have a photograph of two individuals looking behind them, and it appears as if they're looking at the truck, where there is a person wearing, an icon wearing what appears to be a hat and ice cream, and there's this museum. And I think that's all that really matters. And as you guys always tell me in these shows, what the viewer speculates is the viewer's understanding of the photograph.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say, which is if you didn't preclude us or give us the preamble or the beforehand, before we were able to think of it on our own, you told us what to think about it. So therefore, you told us what to think. But had you not said that, we would have come up with our own view, absent of what you told us. So your influence influenced our vision.
Right, but there are enough visual cues for you to understand that. There are two people. No. There are people looking behind. No. I'm not saying anything about me. There's enough visual cues to know that there are people walking forward.
To know.
They're also looking.
Know.
They're also
that's
looking
the operative
behind
word,
them,
and
that there's a truck and a building that has a similar shape to what's on top of their heads. Now, how that
take the fun out of art.
matter.
You want people to know what the image is about rather than to explore the image. How can we know that they were doing that?
Well, I know because I was there taking the photograph. I know.
But you didn't talk to them. You didn't engage them. You didn't say, "Hey, what do you think? What do you see?" You just let them go about. You assumed you had the whole scenario all wrapped up in a bow in your head, and what they said, because it was your image, what they had to say about it didn't matter.
Well, that is the essence of street photography, isn't it? I mean, not everyone's going. Wait a minute. No, anyway. Now, do you speak to every subject you photograph? Kenneth, do you speak to
everyone, but
do you?
I often do, especially if they engage me.
Do you speak to every photo? I don't speak to every subject.
No, and you guys have lost me because
I know.
I'm of the idea of serendipity and 90% serendipity. So
I think Greg's point is, how do you know what's happening in your photograph unless you
No,
actually
right. I don't know what people are
something.
thinking, so I'm not assuming what people are thinking. I'm only capturing what's there. So I don't know what those two people are thinking. I wouldn't think to know what those two people were thinking. It would never come to my mind to try and figure out what they were thinking because it's just impossible.
It's impossible to tell for sure, but you can kind of speculate that if I'm telling you,
But and again, you just said it,
and then they
speculation.
look, wait, it's speculation. Speculation isn't for sure. I'm saying
Speculation is
you can
not.
speculate that if someone looks at the photographer, then looks behind them and chuckles,
Mark. Oh
they
my
kind
God,
of,
here we go.
No,
Speculate.
when you're speculating, you're saying, I
about,
understand it to be this.
right, right, and that is depth to like a journalist. Well, we're speculating that. Oh my God.
Wait a minute. Are you talking journalism? Because I mean, let's be honest. This
I
is a
mean,
certain
even in
amount.
art, you can
It's a
speculate
certain
about
amount
Van
of
Gogh's Starry Night. We could
right, but there's a
speculate.
certain
Oh,
amount of
he was
fiction
drunk on
in art.
absinthe. That's probably.
One of
But
the
come on,
first things you told me to do
speculate.
was to change it to a black and white image, which isn't real at all. There are no black and white images in real life.
That's not
So
true.
that's a
That's
fictionalization
not
of a
true.
scene.
No, that's not true.
There are not. There aren't any.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are.
There are no. They're not.
Well, besides a black and white print, if the lighting is right, the only thing you will see is highlights and shadow. So I beg to differ, but go ahead.
Well, there's the bowling ball in the cave. That's always the black and white.
Okay, now we're going somewhere else completely.
Yeah, gentlemen, and just realized that we're now in our 50th minute of this
Oh
conversation.
my.
Okay, I think.
Good night, Mouseketeers.
Anyway, all I have to say is that I think if one stands on a corner and takes a photograph, you can get a sense of.
Why? Because we like you. Photography.
Greg, I'm disappointed. You're unfortunately being so disruptive. Anyway.
Oh, okay, sorry. Hey, Disney is never disruptive, I'll have you know. It's Disney.
Okay. I mean, you know, the backhanded compliment, you change the print to black and white, further abstract it would make it more real. I don't get it. Anyway, here we go. We have been a journey.
And we always will be.
I don't know if we're always will be, but we have been a journey through photography. I am here with my friends Greg Cleghorn. See, you're first this time. And Kenneth Nelson, until Ken complains that he's not first. And I am Marc Skinner. And maybe they'll let me talk about it the next time. Anyway, have a good night, everyone.